Today we're ranking all 21 skills in Oblivion Remastered, from S being the best to F being the skills we try to avoid. We'll be ranking on 3 overall criteria. First, general usefulness. How much does the skill actually help your character overall? 2, combat utility. How much does the skill help in combat, especially at higher difficulties? And finally, uniqueness. Does the skill do something better than everything else, or can you find its benefits elsewhere? I'll also have explanations and video examples for different skills, and each skill will have its own timestamp so you can skip ahead to find out if you should add that one skill to your next build. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into it. First up is Acrobatics. This skill affects your jump height and reduces fall damage. Now, it's absolutely a fun skill to have maxed. It does allow you to take shorter paths in some dungeon layouts and in the open world. And on its face, it has some unique utility with the ability to dodge, run across water, and greatly reduce damage from falling. However, I've found that dodge is just not the most useful mechanic for avoiding damage. With high enough speed and athletics, you can simply back up to avoid attacks, or use your fatigue on a shield bash to interrupt the mob while doing damage. To be fair, the skill does have some unique utility to anyone that wants to roleplay a cat burglar doing parkour all over a town while they're looting it. But I've found that there's just not that much benefit in climbing up hills and buildings from a gameplay perspective, unless you're trying to cheese mobs who can't reach you. Because Acrobatics just isn't that useful despite some utility in getting around, we're putting it in the D tier. Next is Alchemy. Oh boy, there's so much to go over in this ability that doesn't lend itself to a tier list video. But to sum it up, this is one of the most powerful skills in the game. Pretty much any magical effect can be included in a potion, and the magnitude and duration of potions increases with your skill. Poisons are extremely useful in Expert and Master difficulty, and they're key to any Stealth Assassin build. Every rank in Alchemy allows you to recognize an additional property for any ingredient, and there are tons of ingredients in this game. This causes your options to increase exponentially as you level up the skill. At max rank, you can add a potion effect from a single ingredient and handle more potion effects at the same time. This means with the right overlap, you could add 5 effects to one potion, and have that potion saved on your quick wheel. So say you want something to boost yourself before difficult fights. You can make a single potion with Fortify Magicka, Restore Magicka, Fortify Health, and Restore Fatigue. Just make sure to save your painted troll fat if you find it. Alchemy is uniquely useful as being one of the only crafting skills in the game, and one that is highly customizable and useful. You can create a potion for any situation, whether you need Chameleon for stealth, or a Paralyzed potion for crowd control. Restore Magicka potions are uniquely useful, as magic builds rely heavily on keeping Magicka levels up. Alchemy is probably a must-have for any Expert or Master run, and overall it's an easy choice for the S tier. Next up, Alteration. This skill is the jack of all trades of spellcasting, with travel utility in water breathing and water walking, feather, which is incredibly useful for looting everything in a dungeon and getting back to town, and shields to mitigate both normal or magic damage. Alteration also completely trivializes lockpicking if you have the right spell level, which makes only one of its effects strictly better than security. In terms of combat, shields can be useful especially earlier. However, I've found that your armor skill, block, and magic resist enchantments generally are more effective for this purpose without taking up a slot in your quick skills. Everyone wants to get through locks at some point, and Alteration allows you to completely skip the lockpicking minigame, and frankly the whole security skill, while retaining its other utility. Some of the unique utility from Alteration is also pretty useful. Water breathing can help a lot in certain dungeons, and for exploring lakes and the ocean around Cyrodiil, where you might be able to find a few hidden items in dungeon entrances. Overall, while Alteration isn't particularly powerful or broken in any way, it's pretty useful, so I'm going to put it in the B tier. Now we have Armorer. The power in this skill comes from its perks. Even the Apprentice level perk is very useful here, as it allows you to repair magic items. So as you're going through the game and getting unique weapons and armor, you don't want to be in a position where everything breaks and you're constantly interrupting yourself to go back to town and repair. From a game loop perspective, you want to be getting better at armor so your repair hammers are lasting longer, meaning you don't have to buy as many or carry as many around when you're going out to find big hauls of loot. The Expert perk is where this ability shines, even in combat, as you can increase the base quality of your gear by 25%, which is huge. The Master perk gives great quality of life, because with one unbreakable hammer, you can repair everything yourself without ever visiting a repair vendor, and you don't have to use up all your encumbrance carrying around hammers. The only potential drawback is that Armorer doesn't really grant any direct combat effects, so there are better or more broken options for taking out enemies or surviving, for example. But it's still a perfect 6th or 7th skill to pick to round out almost any build. Armorer is going in the A tier. Next we have Athletics. Athletics affects run, swim, and sprint speed. In general, it's useful for getting around cities in the world map, but falls off a bit once fast travel becomes an option. It's still very useful for players interested in exploration and questing while getting around quickly. The perks also offer general good utility for retaining fatigue, so you can be ready for a fight after running around. In terms of combat, Athletics isn't the most useful skill, but it does have some unique utility that other skills don't. High movement speed allows you to take a few swings with a weapon, or get off a touch spell, and then quickly back up to avoid an enemy attack. This is especially useful when fighting multiple mobs, where you need to position yourself so you aren't open to multiple attacks at once. It's true you can use Restoration to buff your speed, however I've generally found this to be very tedious for travel because generally you want to be fast for more than 2 minutes at a time. It also stacks with Restoration buffs, so for those reasons it retains its uniqueness. Athletics is going in the A tier, although probably it'll end up as a low A. Next up is Blade. Blade affects damage with blade weapons, which include daggers, short swords, long swords, and claymores. Blade has general good utility in being one of the 3 core weapon skills in the game, and having one of those is a necessity for any melee-focused playstyle. Blades are also the most common weapons to find in the game, at least I've personally found a plethora of enchanted or named blade weapons so far in my runs. For melee combat, it excels as compared to blunt weapons in my opinion, because its perks unlock potential for greater damage stacking and multipliers. Applying weakness to normal damage provides a noticeable damage buff, and it helps both you and any followers or conjured allies that are fighting the target with normal attacks. Fast blades, such as short swords and daggers, are also great to enchant and apply weakness to magic effects, as they can apply stacking effects in quick succession. However, melee is still weak overall in Oblivion when compared to magic. Much higher damage and more stacking effects can be found in the destruction list, and weakness to magic stacking mechanics. Still, blades provide a unique benefit that shines when compared to the blunt skill. For those reasons, Blade is going in the B tier. Up next we have Block. Block affects damage mitigation when blocking. Block excels at reducing damage taken from normal attacks at the expense of fatigue and some health, but it's useless against magic attacks. One drawback to Block is it does take up your action, so while you're blocking you aren't swinging with a weapon or casting a spell, for example. Now, once you get expert in Block, you unlock Shield Bash, which allows you to attack with your shield and deals damage while interrupting the target, so you don't have to wait for your target's attack to hit you if you want to interrupt them. This is a huge buff to the ability that makes Block worth investing into. Block is also unique because it's one of the only active damage mitigation skills in the game that you can use in a pinch. You can always have something equipped in a dedicated inventory slot that uses Block, either a shield or a two-hander, and it has its own key or button, so it doesn't take up a spot on your quick skill wheel. It's worth choosing as a major skill because it doesn't level too fast, allowing you to retain relative power for your level. Block is going in the high A tier. Now we have Blunt. Blunt weapons are a more defensive alternative to blade weapons, with perks that can grant you a shield and silence enemy casters. Blunt is one of 2 choices for any melee playstyle, and there are some powerful blunt weapons in the game, including a popular Daedric artifact. Some drawbacks are you'll be doing less damage output with blunt attacks compared to blades, there are better options for shield and mitigation, and the silence is pretty situational. Blunt does not have the benefits of very speedy attacks for applying weakness enchants that you get from short swords and daggers, and it doesn't have a counterpart to the large sneak attack bonus of daggers. There's also better alternatives for silencing dangerous caster enemies, such as the silent spell effect, but to be fair, having this ability on a normal attack separate from your quick skills does open up your options. Overall, Blunt gets placed in the C tier. Next up is Conjuration. Conjuration grants the summon creature, bound weapons and armor, and turn undead effects. This skill is pretty useful throughout the game, particularly the ability to summon creatures, who do full damage in expert and master difficulties. Bound weapons and armor can also be a very powerful option for a Spellblade or other hybrid character that utilizes both weapons and melee. In combat, summon creatures are one of the few ways to control aggro from monsters, allowing your summons to get the attention of mobs while you back up to heal or prepare a spell. In my playthrough, I found the Skeletal Guardian was particularly useful for this. Bound weapons are very powerful, even overpowered when used at low level, and count as enchanted weapons, allowing you to hit ghosts and wisps. I haven't used Turn Undead as much, despite having Conjuration as a major skill in my main playthrough, because I think it's better to just be killing mobs as opposed to CCing them in most cases. However, this could be useful if you need to run from undead mobs in a tight dungeon. Since at least 2 of Conjuration's spell effects are very powerful at different points in the game, and because they have unique utility, despite not being broken to level of, say, Alchemy, Conjuration is going in the A tier. So, Destruction. Here we go. For anyone stuck in their expert or master playthroughs, may I suggest to you the dual threat of weakness and damage spell effects. Weakness is a multiplier in this game, boosting your damage spell effects to insane levels, making master difficulty health bars seem like they might as well be novice. Take the effects 100% weakness to magic, 100% weakness to fire, and fire damage. If you make a spell that casts the first 2 weaknesses on a mob at the same time, prior to casting the fire damage spell, you're multiplying your damage ×2 for the weakness to magic, and then ×2 for weakness to fire, causing any subsequent fire damage to do 4 times damage on your target. Combine this with, say, a blade weapon that deals fire damage and applies additional stacking weaknesses, and you can just watch your enemies melt on any difficulty. Destruction does one thing and does it the best in the game. It destroys enemies. With spellcrafting at the Arcane University, you can make skills for any situation, whether you want a large AoE to apply weaknesses and damage to packs of mobs, or a massive combined damage over time spell mixing shock, fire, and frost damage to overcome a large, resistant enemy. This makes Destruction one of the best skills in the game and easily goes in the S tier. Next up is Hand to Hand. To be honest, Hand to Hand is just not good in this game, but let's try to be fair to the skill and see what could be positive here. You don't need to find an amazing weapon since you're unarmed and you're dealing fatigue damage on top of the damage your hands are doing. At 50 skill, you can start disarming enemies with power attacks, which is pretty unique for melee. Eventually, you will be doing a whole lot of fatigue damage, which will allow you to pretty much stun lock single enemies. But there's a lot of bad here. Firstly, you just won't be doing as much base damage as you will when equipping a high-quality, armor-tuned weapon, which is a big deal to start. You aren't using a weapon and shield, meaning you're sacrificing an armor enchantment on your shield and a weapon enchantment, meaning you can't use block as an active ability to interrupt enemies, and you can't use your weapon to apply weaknesses or other spell effects such as silence or soul trap. The ability to disarm and knock down enemies could be considered unique, but I don't think you ever really want to do that over just doing raw damage to enemies, unless you're going for, I don't know, a role-playing monk build. There's just too many downsides for not much benefit, so unfortunately it's going in the F tier. Next is Heavy Armor. There's only 2 armor skills in Oblivion, so each can be considered useful since you need to choose one, unless you're role-playing an unarmored character or wearing no armor for the full spell effectiveness. Passive damage mitigation is useful, and Heavy Armor gives you the most. The perks are very similar to Light Armor, as they both degrade slower and way less as you level them up. However, since Heavy Armor gives a lot more mitigation and eventually provides no encumbrance, it is the superior choice in my opinion. In combat, the mitigation is significant. With endgame armor, I can take very little damage from most normal attacks, which frees up my actions to do attacks of my own or cast spells. It provides crucial protection when you need to get close to land a touch spell, which tend to be more powerful than targeted spells, since you can't block while casting. The downside to Heavy Armor is the added weight as compared to Light Armor, which can be a pain at low levels. Heavy Armor is also louder and much harder to sneak in. However, I've found it pretty simple to switch into certain guild-provided armor when I need to do something sneaky. The encumbrance also goes away completely at Master Skill, and you can use the Feather effect from Alchemy and Alteration to reduce weight in a pinch. Overall, because Heavy Armor to me is the clear favorite armor skill, and armor skills are useful, it's going in the S tier. Next up is Illusion. Illusion has lots of utility. We can charm or paralyze NPCs, cast invisibility or chameleon effects, or command creatures to assist us. It's a great choice for casters who want to mimic the stealth abilities of sneakier playstyles, while also using some trickery to become probably the closest thing to Deus Ex you'll see in Oblivion. While a lot of the utility isn't completely unique and can be obtained with other skills such as Sneak and Alchemy, Illusion can be a good choice for builds that can't fit in skills such as Speechcrafting, as you can charm NPCs to unlock all necessary dialogue options and improve standing with merchants. Silence and Paralyze are mostly unique effects that can be used as openers when engaging a pack of enemies. While nothing from Illusion is inherently game-breaking, it has a lot of useful effects that can take the place of secondary skills, acting as a filler for tight character builds that can't afford more niche skills. We're putting Illusion in the A tier, although I do have it at a lower A. Alright, light armor. So we discussed this a bit when talking about heavy armor. It's going to always be useful as one of the 2 armor options, and in general you want to be wearing a full set of armor to get the full benefit of enchantments and damage mitigation. Light armor allows you to be sneaky and carry more in the early to mid game, which is an important part of the playthrough and can really help out stealthy or agile character builds. The downsides to light armor are the lower protection, which is very pronounced in the early and mid game, and the sneaking difference can be solved by keeping a set of sneaky armor with you, or even taking potions, which will help reduce detection. Once you start looking at these ways to manipulate the weaknesses of heavy armor becomes vastly superior to light armor in my opinion. That said, because there still are some benefits for certain roleplay styles and an early stealth gameplay, we're putting light armor in the C tier. Next we have Marksman. Marksman governs damage with bows. This is the bread and butter of the infamous stealth archer build, a combat archer, or just any build that wants an option to apply poison at a distance prior to starting combat. For that reason, this skill has synergy with Alchemy, one of the strongest skills in the game. Marksman also works great for getting sneak attacks off on your targets, as you can maintain a large distance and more easily stay undetected. One of the weaknesses of Marksman is that you do need to carry arrows with you and ensure they are high quality to get the most damage out of your build. It can also be difficult to get off a large amount of arrows in higher difficulties without having some form of distraction to get the mobs off your back. Marksman suffers for having not the best perks until the higher levels, with the lower level skills focusing on drawing and holding back your bow, which won't be necessary to hold in most situations. Once you do get to Expert and Master in Marksman, you unlock the ability to paralyze enemies on hit with your bow. This is super useful for knocking down an enemy for crowd control at the start of a fight, or keeping an enemy stun locked while your arrows and poisons wear it down. Overall, while Marksman is very powerful when mixed well with a stealth or alchemy focused build, its various drawbacks bring it down a peg, so for that reason I'm putting it in the B tier. Next up is Mercantile. This skill was actually changed in Oblivion Remastered so that XP gain is based on the amount of gold received when selling, instead of granting a flat amount per sale. This could be good for leveling and mixing Mercantile with alchemy or armor to get great benefits from NPC vendors early on, but you do need to be careful not to level too many non-combat abilities too quickly. The biggest drawback to Mercantile is there is no direct combat benefit to this skill. You might be able to find and buy better weapons and armor, which I am taking into consideration, but once you start getting unique items from questing and exploring, this really falls off fast. Because Mercantile gives no direct combat ability, it can be dangerous to level it too fast, as the world will level around you and you could find yourself comparatively weak in terms of combat ability. Despite its weakness, Mercantile has unique utility in that it influences a core game mechanic of buying and selling loot, and influences the effectiveness of your other abilities by allowing you to accumulate better gear, spells, and alchemy ingredients. We're putting Mercantile in the B tier. So next is Mysticism. So even spellcasting in Oblivion needs to have its weak skill. This is the spell school for clairvoyance, which you get at level 1, and has some niche abilities like Sense Life and Telekinesis, which I don't think I've ever used. You can just walk up to the item that you need to interact with, so that one's a throwaway, although Sense Life can be used in a few situations where you're sneaking around and you want to see the guard's positioning. In terms of combat, Mysticism does have a saving grace from Reflect and Absorb magic effects. If you're playing as the Atronax sign, having a constant Absorb magic buff is a great way to get all the mana back that you aren't regenerating. Reflect can also be very good against certain caster mobs, but its usefulness is very situational. Other than that, you're left with the Dispel and Soul Trap effects. Soul Trap is necessary, but you don't really need to invest much into the skill in order to use it, and you can generally just add it to a weapon to keep the effect on an enemy. Dispel can be good to add to a custom weakness spell so you're debuffing enemies fully, but other than that, you're generally going to be focused on doing actual damage in fights. Given its limited utility for most things we'll be doing in the game, we're putting Mysticism in the D tier. Next up is Restoration. So if you like staying alive and don't mind making your character incredibly powerful in any way you might want, this might be the skill for you. The Fortify spell effect falls under Restoration, which can be used to significantly buff your stats or any other skill. Do you want to run really fast but didn't take athletics or speed? You can make a spell that buffs those up with Restoration. Are you locked out of casting certain spells because you don't have enough magicka? You can fortify magicka and fortify intelligence with Restoration and then cast whatever you want. If the fortify effects weren't good enough, Restoration also lets you heal. With initial investment, you'll start out with a minor healing spell, but you also have options later on to purchase or craft very strong healing spells that either act instantly or heal over time for more efficiency and lower magicka cost. Restoration even shines as a combat ability, as it includes the Absorb spell effect, which allows you to leech life, mana, or even attributes from your target. It really can't be overstated just how good Restoration is in this game. I can't even think of a downside to picking this ability. Restoration easily goes right next to Alchemy in the S tier. Unfortunately, we have to follow Restoration with Security. Unless you're role-playing a thief that can't use magic, Security is completely useless. Here's why. Security skill doesn't matter at all in determining what locks you can pick. Put another way, if you have the right Alteration spell to open a lock, or if you just have a decent grasp of the lockpicking minigame, Security is completely useless. You can also use Alteration for other things, as we've covered previously, so there's really never a reason to take Security over Alteration, and you definitely don't want them both as major skills. Even if you like the lockpicking minigame and want to interact with it, the only benefit the perks give are to reduce the number of tumblers that fall when you fail. If you're having trouble with lockpicking, you can either use Alteration to open locks, or check out the video I released which shows how to get a 100% success rate in the lockpicking minigame. Choosing and then leveling up Security is basically asking to fall behind in this game's power curve, and it really has no redeeming qualities outside of role-playing. F tier. Next up we have Sneak. Sneak affects detection, pickpocketing, and most importantly, sneak attacks. For detection purposes, Sneak tends to get mogged by Illusion and the Chameleon spell effect. While having high Sneak can be very powerful for completing quests, and even abusable when combined with the right poisons and effects for high damage multipliers, the ability to cast Chameleon with Illusion almost completely negates the utility for detection purposes. Pickpocketing is something that I simply have not done very much, but the times I have pickpocketed have not been rewarding, and I haven't seen it used much in quests. It is used a bit in quests, but where it's used I was able to complete those tasks without much investment in the skill. That said, the Apprentice and Master levels of Sneak each give powerful damage bonuses to unaware targets. This makes Sneak a staple in any Stealth Archer or Rogue build. Because Sneak retains utility for those purposes, and this utility is useful in combat, we're putting it in the B tier. Finally, we have Speechcraft. I actually enjoy the Speechcraft minigame. I find it to be pretty intuitive and the NPCs have different patterns, so it's sort of a way to encourage the player to engage with NPCs and see if you can unlock different dialogue options. The most obvious argument for Speechcraft would be that you need it to unlock certain quest options, one big example being if you want to join the Thieves Guild at the beginning. But you can also solve this by using Illusion to charm NPCs. Unlike Security though, Speechcraft does retain some unique utility in that it governs the initial prices NPCs will offer before haggling with the Mercantile system. Speechcraft is probably the worst of the two skills though, and you want to be very careful about taking both Speechcraft and Mercantile as major skills, as neither has a direct combat benefit. Although Speechcraft suffers in the same way as Security from being overshadowed by more powerful skills, it does retain some utility even then. I do enjoy it more myself since it does come in handy for opening up the game early on, and completing the Persuade minigame with NPCs, which I enjoy, so there's a little bit of personal preference coming through on this one, and that's okay. I'm putting Speechcraft in the C tier. Okay, let's see how we did. I'm pretty sure the F tier is just correct. Maybe somebody knows a hand-to-hand build, but you'd have to go out of your way to make that work, and Security is just useless. For the S tier, maybe Heavy Armor was too high, but my playstyle uses touch spells, so I'm getting in close and not blocking very much. Athletics could maybe go down, but Exploration is huge in a game this big, and keeping Fatigue high is really nice. It's also good for speedrunning Oblivion gates if that's your thing. Mercantile and Speechcraft are probably going to be controversial, but I think they're okay, especially if you aren't completely cheesing the game with Alchemy and Restoration, and they're both good early. Overall, I think this is good, but what do you guys think? Am I crazy for ranking Athletics this high? Do you have an insane hand-to-hand build that blows this list away? Comment down below and let's discuss. Remember to leave a like and subscribe if you liked what you saw. I'm just getting started here on YouTube, so every little bit of support really helps me a lot. Be sure to stay tuned for more Oblivion Remastered content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.